Hello, everyone. I am Mara Elaine, and welcome to this new interview series or transmission series, all centered around Earth wisdom and cosmic connections. So, this is a vlog that really has been inspired by the current times that we are living in, and times of great shift and great evolution for humanity and the Earth. And for me, I'm very passionate about earth wisdom, traditions, and really connecting with elemental nature and all that that encompasses. And also dialoguing with and integrating our cosmic aspects and that wisdom from the stars. So today, my guest is an amazing woman I had the privilege of meeting over the ethers 3 years ago. And she is, her name is Lalita Karoli. And Lalita is an amazing astrologer. But just a little bit about Lalita herself. She's based in the US, and her earliest memories are from a field of alfalfa, living with her young mom and dad in a little white trailer. And she is deeply rooted in agricultural tradition and currently lives in a magical food forest. She's a mother, a shaman, and an astrologer. And so today she's going to speak to us about the end of an age from an astrological perspective and also from an agricultural and permaculture perspective. So we're opening up here to your wisdom today, Lalita, and we're going to also discuss, what is ahead for humanity and her views around that. So thank you, Lalita. Welcome.
Mara, thank you for that introduction. And when I heard that, I felt very emotional. It was wonderful to hear that I have come from this small trailer on the edge of an alfalfa field, because going back to those roots of that green beauty and the very simple life that I had, I remember that during that time, I felt absolutely connected to the earth. As a small child, walking along that farm road from my little trailer, I was capable of anything. And some of my earliest memories are actually running off into those fields with my two little beagle dogs, and my father coming and finding me later and saying, "Oh my gosh, where have you been? You've been gone for hours. How would you have found your way back?" Now, as a little toddler, I had no doubt whatsoever in my safety and the beauty of those farm fields, and that my little beagle dogs knew the way home. So there was nothing that could have perturbed me. I was absolutely one with all of it. And my father heard that little girl say back to him, "Well, the beagle dogs knew how to get home, Dad." And a look on his face of the conscious awareness of that truth, that I, as such a small child, knew that I was perfectly at home on Earth with its creatures, far away from my little white trailer. Now, the other thing that I wanted to do with this introduction is I wanted to speak a little bit about the view that I had of the changing nature of agriculture. The alfalfa field is a perennial crop that any kind of grazing animal, particularly dairy cows, can eat, and it's a very high source of protein, and it has a deep root down into the earth. It can be mowed and cut and stored for the winter when the snow is deep, and in the summer, cows can graze on that lush green of earth without ever needing to replant it because it's perennial. Now, in my early childhood, all cows lived either on a grassy slope, or they also were put out to pasture in those deep foliage pastures, depending on their milk cycle. I grew up, my father was a tenant farmer. As many people in Western New York were, they helped a bigger farm of 70 cows to milk. So we always got up at 4:45 And my dad would bring home a gallon of unpasteurized, unhomogenized milk. And I grew up on that fresh from the farm. My dad often took me to the dairy parlor, and he let me name one of the little calves, and I named her Rosie. And I had this very deep connection with those beautiful animals, and that they were giving us milk, and that I lived in this field of alfalfa that was their food. And I felt again and again every bit of that perfect oneness with the cycle of the animals and the plants, and that everything was abundant and provided for. There was nothing lacking. I didn't reflect on the fact that I lived in a trailer or that my father was a tenant farmer. None of that mattered to me, because the economics of that situation were not necessary to be part of, because I just felt that no matter what, I was taken care of. And my dad knew intimately how to do this because he was a good agricultural student. Now, what I saw in the years after that was that my brother-in-law went to agricultural school. And during his time in the agricultural schools of New York, there came a methodology of changing what animals eat. And I remember my brother-in-law coming back and saying, we have to go bigger. We have to get much bigger. We have to get big barns and keep the cows inside the barns. And we have to grow to a rate of 700 cows. From 70 cows to 700 cows happened in one generation. Now, my brother-in-law is a good, beautiful man. But what he learned in agricultural school was that the little farms were not going to succeed ever again. So they were really taught very strongly that you had to go big. So now when I visit my brother-in-law, which is in the same area that my father's people came from, they have 700 cows and they milk around the clock, and they feed them corn. And the corn is all Monsanto glyphosate corn. Now, those fields you cannot walk into without a biohazard suit. There are signs on all of those fields that say poison, that you cannot actually enter that field. And so when I took my daughters there, and my father has passed now, and we went to his gravesite where the family all are buried in the soil of that earth, it is completely surrounded by those cornfields that are poisonous. Like 10 feet from my father's grave is glyphosate from the last 40 years. And 40 years of glyphosate has made the soil concrete so that it can only be plowed by very big machinery. Now, the harvesters of that machinery, each piece costs over $300,000. So the cycle that those farmers are in now is that they own pieces of machinery that are worth over $300,000, so they are in debt to a system. They are in debt to the massive greenhouse type structures that the cows live in. The cows have never touched the grass. The feet of those cows have never touched the grass. Now, this is not just true in New York, Western New York, where I'm from, but last year I traveled across from New York, Ohio, all of the Midwestern states, and I did a video called The Cauldron of Change in the fields of Minnesota. And I spun around singing this song about the cauldron of change. And the fields endlessly are with these big sprayers, all of which are spraying a glyphosate, which is a Roundup type of product that was used in Vietnam as a defoliant, so that the fields have nothing growing in them, no weeds. Every time glyphosate is sprayed every worm, microorganism, and other little creature that could live there, including mice and voles, all die immediately. I remember in those earlier days, they had planes that went over just like Vietnam, and the planes would spray the fields. And then my dog would run through the fields, you know, sniffing with his nose to the ground, and his skin would slough off all the way to the bone. So I knew to never let my children into those fields. Now, this is very important in the conversation of the change of the age, because virtually the entire population of the United States where I live is fed upon that glyphosate corn. It's in corn oil, is in virtually every product, from cereal to Doritos, things that children eat, school lunches, things that adults eat in prepackaged food. Glyphosate is sprayed so heavily in California that even in organic fields, they find that it is completely covered with glyphosate. That is a disruptor in the human biology that everyone can just watch. Dr. Zach Bush, I posted a 5-minute video of his today, such that 46% of children now have chronic disease, directly linked to the glyphosate disruption in our immune systems. Not only that, but there's another clinical psychologist who now attributes virtually all mental illness also to that same disruption. The food does not have nutrition in it anymore, because the nutrition of food comes from a soil that is decomposing with those worms and other microorganisms and fungi. That is where the nutrition comes from. So not only is it pesticide laden with something that destroys the human biology, but it doesn't have any nutrition. So in fact, people are starving. So here in the United States, no matter how much you eat, you're actually starving. And that is another key factor in how the age will need to change, because we are now facing such crisis in our human biology that the viruses that are coming forth do affect us, even though in the United States, we all know that a virus is just a program for the DNA upgrade. But what all viruses do right now, whether it's Lyme disease or the current virus, is it unmasks the other chronic illness in the body, most of which is from the glyphosates. The other part of it is from the cyanide in the air pollution from driving so many cars. Now, I live a life, and then I'll stop and would love to hear from Mara. I live a life based on that early abundance that I knew that the green earth would provide everything that I need. And I've set up the video today so that you can see some structures that we put together between March 29th of 2020. And they're fully food producing and laden with peas. They're covered with beans. The corn is chest height. There's lettuce. There's all kinds of blueberries through the central column, which are a perennial food. And virtually, all we had to do was put down some box board that was free from the supermarket or some newspaper that my neighbors use, and pile horse manure from the local horse farm a foot deep on top of that. You don't have to plow. You don't have to dig. We never use any kind of farm equipment other than a wheelbarrow and shovel. That's all we have. And Claude is in the yard pushing around that wheelbarrow right now. And within 3 months, we have so much food. There's no way I can eat that food. In fact, Claude and I have to give up the fact that we cannot eat all of that food. even though we're eating greens 3 times a day, like mounds and mounds of greens and peas and basil, and there's also beets and other things down there that are ready, radishes. That food was grown when it was still snowing and frosting here in Vermont. So we had our last frost on June 1st. But on June 1st, I went out with water from our rain barrel and just watered the corn and beans and squash. The squash already has little patty pans and zucchinis on it. And if you water during a frost before the sun hits it, it will not decay the leaves. You just have to water it before it warms up to 33 degrees. So there's a lot of old tricks that my grandmother taught me that we as humans, we are so capable, and the earth is so giving that in 3 months, any land space that is approximately 20 feet by 40 feet can produce all the food that you can eat and more. And Mara, I think I'm going to stop now because I want people to know that we can do this. And this is the most pleasurable activity I can imagine waking to each day.
Thank you, Lalita. There's so much in there. And just to start on that note, to feel the abundance of life that is all around you there. It's just like it's otherworldly, but it's actually true Earth. Right? And thank you. I feel like that is so crucial for everybody to understand, that actually you only need a small little area, or even collaboration with others, and grow together, whatever is needed for these times. And I see it happening. I see great movements happening worldwide, and here in Ireland, there's amazing growers, amazing young 20-somethings and even younger, setting up market gardens and completely organic, amazing stuff happening. But going back to what you spoke about, the glyphosate, I think that's such a critical issue. And I feel that there are so many, particularly the older generations that I speak to here in my life around that topic, they're completely unaware. It's like there is a collective amnesia around it. There's just the veil is like, no, they can't acknowledge it because the energy and impetus isn't even there with them to grow their own food. Like, it's almost too much to contemplate. How would you agree with that?
Mara, the growing that we do here was visited by the Northeast Organic Farmer Association and several other persons that were making documentaries. Claude and I held conferences here, but we also invited the local elementary school here many times. I was the coordinator of the local farmers market on our green and really invited people to start growing. Claude and I connected the local growers to the elementary school cafeteria. We had the children come here. They brought their school bus up Densmore Hill Road, which is a 700-foot rise on a dirt road. And the children all came off, and I said, when you step off of this bus, realize that every place your feet touch is food. There is nothing in this yard that is not food. There's literally everywhere that you walk in this yard is food. And the documentary makers, one was made mostly about the elementary school change of cafeteria policies. But the documentary makers said, we can't really even make a documentary on this place because no one will believe it. No one will think it's possible. We are in some books. We're in a root cellar book about how to design and build your own root cellar so that you can store your food in the winter in the climate of Vermont. But what I'm finding, Mara, is the only way that we will know that we can do this is to do this. So I have some potted plants behind me that I'm not sure you can see, but it's basil in a pot. And my older daughter lives in an apartment where she's actually been asked not to have any pots outside on her little area, but she didn't give up. She potted everything, and she has plants hanging from the ceiling and in every window. She has plants everywhere because her soul, Kachina's soul, cannot survive without the interaction with plants. And this is something very interesting, is that she's so connected to that need, that human need to be able to put a seed in soil and nurture something, that she can't not, even if she lives in a little tiny dark apartment, basically in a basement. She needs to have plants around her all the time. Now, something I want to talk about quickly, and then back to you, Mara, is that our DNA is interactive. So when they did the DNA studies in the 1990s, we were all excited to find out like how amazing the human DNA is. And a lot of my clients are scientists and also work in the medical field. So they were like, wow, the human DNA, we can't wait to find out. It turns out that the human DNA is less specific than that of a flea. We're only one strand away from being a worm. We are so connected to the exact same biology of an earthworm that we, in fact, are mostly in our weight process, 99% bugs. We are in the weight of your human body. You are actually 99% bugs. Now, and you can look that up, you have only in the weight of your physical structure 1% human DNA in your body. You are an interactive being with your environment. And what I think, and this is a non-scientific experience that I have with the earth, is that that other part of the human DNA that they could not figure out what it does or how it functions, and it's called junk DNA. All of that junk DNA is an interactive DNA, so that these plants interact with me, the earthworms interact with me, and that junk DNA actually turns on in the interaction with my plants and the worms. A deep knowing that I have of where to put everything comes from touching the earth. I don't read books on this. I don't need videos on this. I touch the earth and I know this right here will grow the beets the best. The earthworms will pop up from the soil and look at me and interact with me when I'm weeding the garden. Everything in my environment is interacting with me because I am truly one with the consciousness that is Gaia. All of that junk DNA that seems like totally irrelevant when they did this and they found out that basically we're one strand away from being a worm. We are non-specialized, less specialized than a flea that bites my dog, because our DNA is interactive and our full processing ability and wisdom comes from that interaction. So how do I know how to grow? By growing.
Exactly. Beautiful. Beautiful. That the transmission of that, it's true elemental connection, right? It's you're merging with the earth, and so that's where it rises up through you, and you listen and hear. Do you feel that takes a certain kind of human in order to be able to listen to the earth in that way?
Well, that is an interesting conversation that I would love to make a video on, showing astrology chart after chart after chart, and I know your chart well enough, Mara. Every human is a cell in the consciousness of humankind. We are all interactive. Some of us are choosing very special gifts and pathways and archetypes that we will live out. Every one of us is living out the beauty of the consciousness of Source in a perfect way. Every single one of us is completely capable of interacting with Earth in this way. So across the board, anyone that I find is growing, is gardening, is planning to do a permaculture project, or even just putting in a tree, every one of us is divinely equipped to interact with Earth and grow food, and still have our other natural, unique contribution to the consciousness of humankind. Because at our root of evolution and biology, the more interactive I am with this plant kingdom, the better my gifts come out. You see, there's nothing particular in my chart that would make me a good gardener, or my partner Claude's chart, or my daughter's charts, or the fellow who's doing the Billings Farm heirloom gardens chart. Like, I know enough charts to know that there's nothing specific about that. But when I interact with nature, I immediately am super endowed, I would say, to then give my other gifts. And if you've had an astrology session, it's like, where does my wisdom come from? Yes, I can read the stars, but my deep rooted connection to the earth, that feeling that we are all supported, is why I can hold space for the deepest, scariest experience that someone's telling me about, or their hopes and their dreams and their visions. I can hold it all because I am a container, because the earth is my container that I sit in. It's like, this is my cup that continually allows more receiving of that celestial knowledge. I have never seen a chart that is specifically pointed towards agriculture, and I've never seen a chart that says, no way could you ever grow anything.
That's great. And it reminds me actually of our last conversation together, something that was arising in me, and we discussed around growing and cultivating your own food, because not having your own land, and how to work with what you've got from where you are, right? And what was significant that came up in our discussion was trusting your relationship with the earth, in that you can actually grow something. So trusting the relationship with the seed and your ability to nurture that seed to growth.
Yes. Well, one of my favorite stories is a client who lives in Ireland. And last year, many planets came into Virgo. I don't know if you remember that time when many planets all conjoined in Virgo. And I kept going, there's something getting us ready right now for what's coming in the stars. So I opened a page called Practical Magic Permaculture. And on August 26th, I made a video of my land here. I think it's called Practical Magic Permaculture at Lalita Karoli's YouTube channel. And one of my clients who lives in Ireland, who was like a Harvard-trained businesswoman, who actually is a Google executive, she had the stellium in Virgo. So there's timings for all of us. And that Virgo energy is that seed, that connection to the earth, like the abundance and security and fertility that the seed gives us into the earth. And I remember she went to a seed bank in Ireland where they were showing like carrot seeds come from this beautiful white umbral in its second year as a carrot. And she, like, something deep in her knowing opened up when she saw them picking these teeny little seeds out of this beautiful white umbel. And she's going, that's where a carrot seed comes from? My gosh, that's how they grow in the second. And from that experience, just seeing that, she and her partner invested in a piece of land, and her life is completely changed now. Now, is she still an executive and a businesswoman and doing those? Yes, but something else opened up and blossomed in her. And there are timings which are coming very strongly now, requests from the stars for us to go back to the earth. And another piece of that, which we can shift when you're ready to the astrology, is that Uranus, the planet of revolution, like generational change, revolutionary action, is in Taurus, which is like the deep sensual connection to earth. It's the plow that pulls across the field if you use a plow, and the bull that's pulling it, deep furrows into the earth. And in the springtime, when you smell that earth and you take in the beautiful blue sky and the rain deep down into the earth, and you plant that seed and you feel the growth and abundance come up, Uranus is the place of revolution. And everything else where the systems seem to be collapsing because of so many planets at the end points and degrees of Capricorn, those systems will continue to collapse. We will not even be allowed to hold on to any of those systems. So we look, and several of the outer planets are gathered at the end of Capricorn, just destroying those old systems and structures. We will not be allowed to do that again. And I can explain that in more detail when you're ready. But I saw change in many people. Not that they don't still do these other bits, but that the touching of the earth has opened up an innate intelligence in them. And now they feel more energy, they have more drive, they want more connection with the earth. And that will continue to grow over the next 5 years.
Thank you. I think that's so critical. You know, it's not even if you're not even growing, it's just that connection with elemental consciousness and trusting that. And I know in my own path, that's been my awakener. That's been the thing that's awoken my star aspects, all of that. So yeah, getting feet on ground, connecting with those seeds. Okay, before we transition out of this into more of the astrological focus, Lalita, do you work with seeds? I used to read a book, or the books by Anastasia, the Russian woman who lives in the forest out there, and she works with the seeds she energizes them in her mouth before bringing them to the earth. Is that a practice? Would you have a practice like that?
I have several of my saved seeds right next to me to show you what they look like. I also did a video recently called Saving Seeds as Systems Collapse. This is a very important video for people to watch because the Manzano seed is created as a terminator seed. So when it cross-pollinates with other seeds from open pollination of wind and water even, and birds or bees that are carrying pollens from other fields, what we're finding is perfectly organic heirloom seeds are becoming terminator seeds, meaning they will not germinate again. Now, for the very survival level practice of feeding 7 billion people, even if all the systems and structures and transportation all shut down, it is going to be essential that everyone save seeds. And I'm going to show you how I do it. I haven't purchased this kind of seed in 20 years, and this is a calendula seed. It's very hard to see, but it's just a little hard shell. And I dry them on a screen, and that little hard shell will
Yeah.
produce this beautiful flower.
Beautiful. Yeah.
This makes iodine and a natural antifungal. It is naturally kind of sticky, and when you infuse this into an oil, I make all my balms for healing my skin, and for any kind of cut or injury, this will regrow your skin quickly. The seeds,
Powerful.
yeah, the seeds are touched by me. They're grown in my soil, my DNA, and my perspiration. The oils from my body touch these seeds. But not only that, not only can I put it in my mouth, but like Anastasia says, and then put it in the earth, but there's something else to that. My soil in my local environment is breathing the air and the amount of sunlight and the seasonal change in cycles, so that a seed grown in my yard knows what's coming this winter because it's smarter than I am. This seed will prepare enormous amounts of calendula if something in the environment will affect me this winter. This seed knows more than I do about what's coming. So last year, what grew like crazy in my yard was coltsfoot, mullein, and roses. There's rose petals in this, just abundance of coltsfoot. So I said to that plant, you must know what's coming. And I picked many coltsfoot and hung them to dry from the beams in my living room. And then when they were dry, I cut them all up, and coltsfoot and mullein, and there's also peppermint, grew like crazy last year, and not so much this year, but like crazy last year. I dried all that into either a tea or smokable preparation, which clears the lungs. My plants knew what was coming. The plants are our teachers. And as much as I interact with my environment, I will learn quickly what's coming. The other thing that came like crazy last year was chaga, which is a big black fungus that grows on birch trees.
I love it.
Claude and I said, something's coming that's going to require immune response, very strong antioxidants with an immune response to something that this fungus is completely edible, and it will create a super antioxidant like cleansing of your biology. So not only do I lick my seeds and touch my seeds and hold them as the most sacred thing, I look around my environment and say, what is growing really strongly this year? This is going to tell me what's coming.
Thank you. It's so perfect, because we here in Ireland as well, our medicine is always all around us, right? You know, we've such an abundance of milk thistle, dandelion. We have, where I am right now, the gorse bush, which is this prickly gorse, very protective plant with the yellow flowers, which is amazing for healing grief and also lung medicine. So it's so perfect. The land around you really does hold all that medicine. And then we have people who will just decimate it and not be aware that that is actually the homeopathic medicine needed for them, right?
Well, if you look around your environment, Gaia is giving us a medicine just by seeing with our eyes and smelling. It's almost like I don't need to eat as much. In fact, Mara, I'm 50 years old, and I really don't need to eat much at all, which is the problem because I can grow so much. So my just breathing these plants is an exchange of food. It's like an essence of life that I am so abundantly fed by the life around me that I haven't eaten today, and I'm not usually very hungry. So partaking of a meal for me is a sacred event. The eating of a beet green is a relationship, and it's a truly sacred event, because I really actually don't need to eat. I don't need to eat very much at all. I am living in a food forest because this is my love and relationship. But the more that you interact with your environment, whether it's the dandelion or the gorse, it feeds your soul. It feeds your beingness. And that is how I also fully embody, is all of those other galactic parts of me don't get to experience this. But the higher self, the full soul, comes in when you really have that sacred marriage to the earth, because that's what that part of you eats also. Because your other dimensional aspects don't necessarily need to eat the dandelion. But when you're in a reverent state with that dandelion, your full soul will embody, because it said, aha, yes, that is what we're doing here. We're fully embodied now.
Just breathing into that one. that is, you know, you've cultivated your Garden of Eden around you, really. And so I can totally feel the synergy with not needing to ingest, because the level of density that would say someone else, if they're in an urban environment or they're interacting with a lot of different energies and disembodied energies and disconnected from the earth energies, you know, the need to consume is more, almost. So I really, really deeply appreciate receiving that transmission, because that's where I want to be. That's my vision for living in that way more of the time. And I hope to see the earth moving in the way that you're living, you know. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's a powerful piece for everybody, I feel. Yeah.
The soul came here for this interaction. The soul embodied in each one of us to be terrestrial. So when people are starving and they go to Dunkin' Donuts, which is a place here in the United States, and they get something in a big plastic container, and I'm not trying to shame anyone. Everyone should have their experience. I love everyone in their experience. It's perfect. But the food that comes is not alive in any way, so that it cannot feed those more soul etheric parts of you. Whereas if I go down here and pick a single pea that was just living and growing, that single pea has more life force. I'm not even talking about nutrition, but that was just alive. I just ate something that was alive. Whereas the thing at Dunkin' Donuts in the package, it is not alive, and it was grown in a situation that was death. I mean, glyphosate causes death. So it was grown by a terminator seed that also causes death in a field covered with a death molecule. So when you eat that, it actually causes death to your terrestrial experience. It actually is a death food. And all the animals that are fed on that are sad and are sick and are not thriving. And when we eat them or drink their milk, we are also eating the suffering of something that is in a caged, sad environment. Whereas if I go and eat one single pea, I just received the light intelligence of life, of living, of thriving, of exuding just like fertile abundance. So if you just grow one little thing and have that communing with it, even if it's an herb in your house, like a rosemary or something, you're eating life. And that one bit of life equals thousands of Dunkin' Donuts. No Dunkin' Donut has any life in it.
Poor Dunkin' Donuts. I know. It sure doesn't. Give me a P any day. Thank you. Oh, wonderful. Oh, there's so much. I mean, this perspective, there's so much we could go into around this. You know, it's an endless transmission and a re-education for each one of us, you know, this reconnecting back to the earth in these ways. So maybe we'll transition a little bit into your astrological wisdom and what you are perceiving around these times. You know, we're obviously in a, you know, unquestionably a huge tumultuous time of great change on every level, right? What would you like to speak to around this, about where you see us going even, and what's happening in the current times?
Mm-hmm. First, I want to say that, as Mara said, we have a lot to cover in something that we want to make concise for you. So I want to direct everyone to the other resources of my group of galactic shaman astrologers who have spoken on the end of an age. And there are several videos, but look at the end of the age, be in the mystery, to understand the conversation that we're all having right now, that the last age was very clearly marked as what was called the Piscean age, and Jupiter was the ruler of that Piscean age. Jupiter right now is in a fall in Capricorn and is traveling with Pluto, and Pluto in the last degrees of Capricorn is like the decimation of the old structures. It's also kind of taking all of the energy out of Jupiter's kind of abundance, like the big philandering father Zeus, like whatever you want, I'm going to just give it to you. We have boons, we have blessings, we have optimism. We're going to have manifest destiny. We're going to be exploring new lands. We're going to colonize, imperialize, grow manufacturing. That's all Jupiter. Jupiter is very wide open gas planet of expansion. It's pretty much agreed across the board that we have passed through the precessional age. So if you look at the Toltec time counters, the end of the age happened when Venus crossed in front of the sun in 2012. And when Venus crossed in front of the sun, she crossed in the Orion stars. The Orion stars were the duality template of the last age, where we all got to play around as the dark and the light, the good and the evil, the malevolent, the benevolent. So really, the destruction of our agricultural roots was part of that, like, play that we all played with. Was, well, let's see how malevolent we can be. Let's see how destructive we can be. Let's see how separated from source and Gaia we can be. So we actually played very thickly in the muck. Each one of us, in my video, In Nana's Descent, I Am Guilty Too, were contributors and were complicit and complacent in those malevolent, destructive energies. So just realize that that was the play that we just did. We allowed ourselves to experience that duality template. Now, for the next 5 years, the big generational change planets, one of which is Pluto, will be traveling through the last degree of the signs. Neptune will be traveling through the last 10 degrees of Pisces, ending the Piscean age. Uranus will start to travel through the last degrees of Taurus, connecting us in revolutionary action back to the earth. And we're teetering on this, what Dr. Zach Bush explains really well, this potential for annihilation. And in prophecy, whether it's the Hopi prophecy or whatever prophecy that you might be examining, there's a choice in this age of whether we choose to evolve or we choose to annihilate ourselves. Now, I want to say that whatever your choice is, it will be your personal choice. No one will do it to you. No one can make this choice for you, because the change that is happening is towards our personal sovereignty. Saturn is the ruler of the next age, because Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius. And at the end of the year, in December of 2020, actually on the solstice, December 20th of 2020, Jupiter and Saturn will shake hands at the first degree, actually 0 degrees and minutes of Aquarius. And Saturn will be the ruler of the next age. Now, Saturn is the god, the archetypal god of wisdom, hard work, perseverance, enduring difficulties, but also traditionally the god of agriculture. Saturn and the goddess Ceres, who is the great goddess of agriculture, met with Pluto and the Sun and Mercury and Chariklo on January 12th of 2020. And on that day, the agricultural god and goddess met with Pluto, the destroyer, and said, all of that agriculture that you just did and that you all just enjoyed, the destruction of, is over. Now, Saturn has moved forward into Aquarius, but has actually retrograded back with Pluto to continue to destroy these structures this full year. Ceres, the great goddess, is traveling with Medea, whose asteroid archetype is the severing or the actual death of her own children to save them from a more horrible fate that's coming. So Ceres, the goddess of agriculture, again is warning us, like, please make the right choices right now, because there will be a more horrible fate coming if you don't make the right choices right now. Because as Dr. Zach Bush says, the biology that we have now of any 16-year-old is the equivalent to the age process of a 60-year-old. Meaning that those 15 and 16-year-olds that you think should be able to do hard work actually now have the bone decay and the cellular decay of a 60-year-old. So they actually are already 60 years old. So think of a bright new puppy who's wagging its tail and is ready for life, remarkably aged into a graying older dog with joint problems. Every child on the planet is like that right now. We have to make these decisions. We have to do it now. We don't even really have 5 years. We don't even have 10 years. Because if we don't do it now, every child who is born is being born into a biology that will not allow them to be the future farmers. 1 in 3 children is expected to be born autistic. An autistic child, which I have taken care of for 10 years, an autistic adult, needs a caretaker around the clock. They need 3 capable humans with them, basically in every 24-hour period. So 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours. And I was the caregiver for an adult like that. The burden on his family, and I hate to say the word burden, but the pain of that situation for his family was financial, it was social, It was such that their love life suffered. They could not travel. We have to make this change, and Ceres, the great goddess traveling with Medea, is trying to warn us. If we don't make this change, a much more horrible fate is awaiting our children. So it's really clear in the stars what the celestials are telling us. And at the same time, the fall that we all experienced was necessary, because now every one of us can say, now I am the creator of my reality. I am a sovereign being. I can grow my own food. I do not need Costco. I do not need Dunkin' Donuts, nor do I need to blame that big farmer who is millions of dollars in debt, who can never get out of his crops, and those fields will be ruined forever. The glyphosate in those fields will take generations to clear. But in just 3 weeks, if you eat your own food, in just 3 weeks, your biology will clear of glyphosates. That was a video by Dr. Zach Bush called Forgiveness. Your body will immediately forgive you within 3 weeks. Your chronic illness will clear within 3 weeks if you eat food that is alive and organic. Your body is forgiving of all of that. But we have to do it immediately. So, Mara, I really can't stress enough, like, we have to do it now.
The urgency is palpable. There's no denying, and I think you would have to be deep asleep to not feel the sense of, I don't want, not doom, but just, it's now, wake up, yeah, we're all feeling it. I feel it 100%. I'm like, there is an acceleration, and I do eat very well. I've for maybe 10 years or so, I'm very conscious about what I ingest most of the time, and growing what I can at the moment. But I could do so much better, and I think we can all do so much better, right? So yeah, I hear you deeply. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to point out that the Saving Seeds as Systems Collapse video that I made recently has a really good tour of the yard. Claude measured the actual footage that we are growing more food than we could possibly eat. The actual footage is under an acre. So it's far under an acre that grows enough food for you to just be like, oh, we'll just, feed it to, let the birds eat all the mulberries. It's fine. We don't need to eat the mulberries or the cherries or the flowering trees. We have a house, we have our little barn, we have a horse paddock, which provides our manure. We have a stream right behind the house. All of this can be done in under an acre. And if you don't even have an acre, go to your local municipality and set up a foundation called Sustainable, name of your town, like Sustainable Woodstock, and ask for the public land that is along the river, or is part of a park, or is the old railroad station, or is the end of a cul-de-sac where they dump the snow in the winter. The end of the cul-de-sac is a public place in the summer. Ask for that to be a community garden. Call it Sustainable, name of town. Put in newspaper. Get your local horse farmer, not cow, because unfortunately most cows don't eat organic grasses, but most horses eat just grass, pasture grass. You will get organic horse manure. Dump it on top of the newspaper. Dump it a foot thick. Plant in it anything that you want. If you want to go vertical, if you can see the pictures of the vertical behind me, you can either use sapling trees that you can even let alive sapling trees that are rooted, bend them over. Place a framework of either twine or twigs, or in this case, we used our old goat fencing from the goat pasture. Put it over that. And the peas are now 12 feet high. In fact, I have to strap them down to that goat fencing. The corn is not knee high by the 4th of July, but it's chest high. That corn loves me because I love it. So not only does the manure grow it, the love grows it. And everyone can do this. Now, at this point, you still, in virtually every climate, have 3 months of growing still. In 3 months, you can grow everything that you see behind you. In 3 months.
Which is amazing. And then store, you could dehydrate, you could tin or can and put stuff away for the winter, right?
This is a pumpkin from last year. If you keep it dry and put it in a dark closet, this will last an entire year or more, and you can cut it open and then you will have seeds to plant. I will make other videos on how to store, but you will know when you touch the earth and you and your DNA is interactive. You have 300,000 years of deep puzzles in your DNA of how to feed abundantly your entire community. It is in your biology. The way you learn is by touching it. It will teach you. You will know. Trust me, you will know.
Thank you. Powerful. Is there anything else, Lalita, that you would like to speak to around what you feel is ahead for us? You know, I know that, you know, obviously it's a huge time of shift, maybe speaking to that and what you could foresee as the highest outcome for humanity if we do make these changes now.
One thing that the Galactic Shaman astrologers will speak about again is that Saturn, who is the god of agriculture, is traveling with the archetypal virus asteroid, which is called Wuhan. We're calling it Wuhan because we've been tracking it since kind of the realization of a new virus emerging. Now, this new virus, according to Dr. Zach Bush, he predicted that it was going to come out of that very highly Monsanto glyphosate region in China that also was mixed with the cyanide from the smog in the air. This virus is the most benevolent way I can think of actually the god of agriculture causing us to stay in our homes, stay in our yards, and grow our own food. Because if you notice what happened, I was amazed because we did not pick up on this asteroid until February. My Galactic Shaman astrologers picked up on it, and I wrote a blog on February 28th. It couldn't be more benevolent because it's unmasking the problem of glyphosate. It's unmasking the problem of cyanide from our transportation through trucking and shipping of food that really could be grown in our yard. If you just took all the trucking and shipping of food off of the planet, the smog levels would reduce tremendously. Just from shipping the food that you eat in your breakfast each morning would tremendously reduce that. So the Wuhan archetype, which people have been really worried about as a conspiracy and other things, is in the stars. So from that perspective, I can say, you know, do people capitalize on it and make horror out of it? Yes, but it is the divine, necessary celestial communication. On July 11th, Asteroid Wuhan will come back and conjoin Saturn exactly at 29 degrees Capricorn for the end of the old structures in the old agricultural processes. Then by October 9th, Jupiter, which was the ruler of the last age, will enclose Wuhan with Pluto. That enclosure of that asteroid is Jupiter will expand the virus, Pluto will destroy. Jupiter will expand, Pluto will destroy. And actually, Mars will square this from Aries at the goddess of discord for 6 months. And that square is forming right now. I do think that we will have such a crisis on the planet that we all have to grow our own food. We are forced to grow our own food because I believe Dunkin' Donuts and Costco and all the big stores are already experiencing shortages. We are going to be forced by the big factory farms, cannot have 1.5 million pigs all, in cages on top of each other because a new virus is emerging right now from that type of farming that is not getting a lot of media attention, but yet another virus has emerged from that type of farming. And can viruses cross species? Yes. People have said that they cannot. Viruses are not against us. They're not something that hurts us. They unmask other toxins because they are basically DNA programs that ask you to upgrade. So don't be against the virus. Listen and see where it's coming from, what it's unmasking, what it's teaching us, and realize, you can be as angry as you want at the people who want to benefit and capitalize corporately on this virus, but it is celestially a divine packet of information telling us how to get into the next age. That's what it is. My vision for humanity is what I'm living. So that's why sometimes I can't write another blog. I'm just going, look what I'm doing. That's what the stars are telling me. So my vision for humanity is that bright bird singing touches your soul so deeply that you experience the ecstasy of being in this body on Gaia, and that there is no other place you would rather be. You're finally realized why your soul is here. And your soul sings like that bird back. That is my wish for humanity.
I can feel that moving through me completely. Thank you. For all that you're holding and stewarding and modeling, which is the most necessary thing at this time, that all that seems simple and, the most natural ways of being are the most powerful gifts we can give to the earth and to our collective humanity at this time. So I thank you deeply for your service and all that you bring, Lalita. And for all that we've talked about today, I know that there's so much more there, but I think that gives us just a little dive into where we're at and how we need to show up really to meet with these times as sovereign beings, right? So, Lalita, are you working with people at the moment, one-on-one through astrology? Is that?
I'm willing to take clients to read your chart, to look at your unique gifts, and I'm also willing to combine that with a conversation of how to grow a vertical garden in a small space. And I feel that that is much in the stars anyways. So when I'm reading transits to people, I'm often saying, realize that Ceres is traveling with Medea and that there may be a famine this year. In fact, there very likely will be a famine this year, according to the stars. And so I'm willing to read your chart, but I am not willing to give you all the star knowledge and for you not to take action. So please do not contact me through Galactic Shaman astrologers.net unless you are willing to be the creative, beautiful, vibrant being that you were born to be, because I am not giving charts for entertainment or for the old structures. So I will not be able to tell you when to, do something auspicious that only aligns with the old structures. I will not be giving those readings.
Great. Thank you for speaking to that, because I can attest, having had my chart and consultations with you over the last 3 years a few times, they are activations, and you most definitely need to be ready to take action on them. And I've had huge shifts through your interpretation and opening and reading of my chart. So thank you, Lalita. Thank you to all the elements and elementals in your beautiful garden for beaming their wisdom here today as well. And yeah, I will share any of the links of your videos as well below this. So thank you so much, you beautiful woman. And maybe we'll have another conversation down the line.
Thank you.